So thank you for joining us. And George, thank you for carving out some time to talk all things theft and getting your store ready for the holiday season ultimately. Of course, the things that we're going to talk about today are going to be useful any time of year, opening a business, running a business. But as we all know, just this weekend, we're in the Burr months and things just kind of take off, right? We start going into the back to school and then we start going to Halloween, then Thanksgiving, and before we know it, Happy New Year. And we blank and we haven't put, the thought into all the potential things that can and will happen within your walls during these busy seasons. And a lot of you are seasoned. I see lots of names in here. And I see a lot of, new names in here as well. So, you know, George teaches me things every day. Even just yesterday when we were talking about some of the pinpoints for today. And this is just going to be a really casual conversation between the two of us. With you involved, do those Q&A. It's going to be fun. It's going to be relaxing. So I hope you have a drink in hand, coffee, soda, whatever. And let's start and dive in on how to make sure things are not walking out of your store this year unless they are paid for. So just a little bit about me. If this is the first conversation and contact you've had with me, hi again, Megan. I not only do the training and onboarding for SimpleConsign along with Allison, but I also ran a high-end consignment store for 8 years. So that's where I really get that extra layer of these are real things that happen in the store that you don't think about. And then I'm going to let George tell a little bit about himself and his background, where his expertise comes from.
Hi, I'm George. I'm in support. I'm sure several of you have sent me messages or calls or what have you back and forth. I've been with Simple Consign for about 3 years now. Same with Megan, actually. We started about the exact same time. And before that, I worked in banking primarily, did everything from starting out in tellering in college and all the way up to online fraud investigation to just before I had this job. And the online fraud investigation, I was out in Salt Lake City with Wells Fargo, and that was a lot of fun. They vastly underestimated the amount of theft that can happen through like Zelle and things like that. I'm sure there's people in the audience that have had that stuff happen to them too. We'll get into that.
Great, awesome. Thank you. So real fast too, while we get started, George and I are both curious to know, out of everyone that's here, we want you to drop an emoji or a smiley face or something in the chat while we're doing this. If you have personally or in your store been a victim of some sort of theft, and that's why you're here. So drop some kind of comment or emoji. And George, I'm going to hop into some questions for you. I've got a little cheat sheet down here. And I want to start with some of the basics of the physical, what your store kind of looks like and what you have in place. So, should there be, what should you have in your store right off the bat that is going to help safeguard against theft?
Well, let's work our way from the outside in, I guess. On the outside, you may be in it's up to you if your area is like in a spot where you need to be a little more vigilant, let's say. But there's these things called daisy robbers. And what that is as you're going into the store in the morning, they look for people that are by themselves, kind of vulnerable, and they'll come up to you and, just take from you at that point as you're going into the store. So just typically a good idea just to be aware of your surroundings as you're going into the store. And yeah, another thing is as you go into the store, there's your doors, everything there, and you have those. You've probably all seen those strips that say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 foot upward. You don't necessarily have to have those, but those are a good thing to have with a camera facing. All that well. What in specific would you like me to cover?
So no, that
Sure.
exactly it. So, as far as, having those cameras, if you have cameras, where should, say you have one camera in the store, right? Because maybe you have a smaller store. Is it important to have it facing inwards, or would you say more outwards? I know this is like a trick question because you can argue it either way, but now I'm curious.
If I could only have one camera, I would have it facing the door as people walk in and also leave. So that way you can kind of get both sides of them pretty easily.
Gotcha. See, I mean, I'm learning from stuff from him all the time too. So this
It's
training,
not necessarily for anything other than just to keep track of for police reports, really. I mean, you're not, the camera's not going to stop people, but it's going to help you track.
yeah. And let's say that, somebody doesn't have cameras in place because one, either, you're starting out and they can be pricey, or, you just don't have cameras. What are some other things that you can have in the store, or positioning things in the store that will help you see everything?
You'll never be able to see everything, but you'll the number one theft deterrent, and most of you probably know this, is customer attentiveness. So always provide good customer service. Don't ever be confrontational, of course. Don't say, hey, I think you're stealing, but just go up and say, hey, can I help you? I saw that you're looking at that bag that might, have entered their jacket or something. But yeah, be kind and courteous and a little bit uh,
So no chasing anybody out the store.
no, that's probably not a safe idea.
Awesome. No, and the thing is to, too, as far as, those are physical items we can have, but as far as, like you said, that customer service, if we've been in retail for a while, it's been drilled into our brain, customer service is the number one deterrent. But we also know too that that can still happen with it, even though it is the number one deterrent. And, if you're a clothing type store, do you give somebody, we go into regular retail stores and they give you the number, right? And they count how many pieces are going in and out of those fitting rooms if you have clothes. And that's something that I did as well. Because even though you might think it's a pain in the butt that, oh, we've got all this stuff over our arms and we have all these bags, it's not as much the fact of counting the pieces as much as it is the fact that, oh, this person is looking and paying attention to what I'm bringing in there. And they're giving me a tag, even if it's not the right number, because that happens sometimes too. But they're noticing where I'm coming, when I'm going, and what I'm going in with. And that right there will scare most people away, um, walking
The
out.
last thing I'll say about cameras is if you have an ideal setup, let's say like a bank does, you're covering all the entrances and exits, and you also are covering areas that people aren't typically able to walk by if you're not glancing over there very often. And then one final place is directly over where you handle cash at the cash register. It's not to watch people's faces necessarily. It's actually, you'll notice in many banks that it's where that you can actually review the video feed to see someone counting or how they're handling the credit card or ID or what have you. That's probably one of the better places to have a camera if you're dealing with high dollar items or bigger transactions.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to move along and go to another question that I have, because just segmenting into as far as having that camera over where you handle cash. So let's talk about cash. So we, people still, we want to keep cash in the system. They say cash is king. How can we look out for and deter and recognize those counterfeit bills that we hear so much about?
There is actually, fun fact, actually, I'll ask everybody if they know which government agency was put in place to counter counterfeit bills to stabilize the monetary system.
Yeah. And fun fact too, I was wrong answering this question yesterday. I thought I was so close. Yeah.
If you have the answer for yourself, it is actually the Secret Service. They're not origin. Their original mission wasn't to protect the president. It was actually to stabilize the monetary system and stop counterfeit bills. So you can actually go to the government website. They release all this stuff for you. Just Google it, how to detect counterfeit bills, and you'll see a .gov link. And on there, you'll see various different ways that they detect counterfeit bills. You don't necessarily have to have the marker. Once you get used to it, you can get the feel of money as you count it. You'll be able to feel that money is very different. It's not smooth like normal paper. It's got raised ink. The ink's magnetic, so there's different devices you can use to check it. The printing will have little micro etchings of sorts. There's also a security ribbon in higher dollar bills. There's also UV light. So if you have a UV little flashlight or whatever lamp, you can look at the bill with it, and it should have a certain color glow for certain denominations of bills. There's a ton of different ways to detect counterfeit bills. Some of them are very good. Unfortunately, there's bad actors like North Korea out there that make very good counterfeits. And then once you do have a counterfeit, there is a procedure you do through the Secret Service, or you can go to your bank and they can help you out with what to do with counterfeit bills. I've seen stage money from Hollywood and all sorts of other weird, wacky ones. Megan told me that she has seen regular printer paper stuff just sandwiched together.
Yeah,
Um,
that was me. Literally, someone took $100 bill, copied the front, copied the back, cut them out, and put double-sided tape in between, stuck them together. And I was like, here you go. And you might as well have handed me Monopoly money, because my thought was, is this a joke? Because it was so, I mean, just incredibly obvious, but they were totally serious. So, it's kind of one of those things to, let your teammates know, hey, listen, if someone hands you this, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? You're never in a comfortable situation when when somebody does that. But have something in place of, if you don't already, how am I going to handle this? If I have a teenager working in the store and they come across this, do I want them to call a manager immediately and let the manager handle it? How do I want them to handle it? No, sorry, we can't take $100 bills. It's just our policy. We don't have enough change in the drawer. Okay, that alleviates that, as far as, not being confrontational, just the same way you wouldn't be confrontational if you see somebody shove a pair of earrings in their purse, because nobody wants to let that escalate in your store, right?
and sometimes the person that you're getting the money from didn't even know it was counterfeit. A lot of people aren't trained or paying attention, so they might have gotten it from another source. It's hard to say. Another thing I'll say is, a lot of this information, it's good to have it in a binder near your checkout registers so you can teach everybody it. And then there's another binder, maybe the same one, that you'll want to have for an action plan of what to do after XYZ takes place. That's what is done in, I learned from the banking industry. It's a good thing to have. Another thing with bills, credit cards, IDs, make sure that you're doing it conspicuously. When you count the money, count it in a fan shape and do it conspicuously so that the camera that you have above can see what you're counting. The customer can see what you're counting. So there's no, did you actually, hand me an extra 20 of that going on? We'll go over how to handle credit cards here in a minute. Industry standards are changing, but yeah.
Yeah, well, perfect. You're already laying the groundwork for me. I love you, George. That's the thing too. So most customers are paying with those credit cards. And, remember, like, years ago, because now I'm dating myself as well, they used to send those credit cards in the mail, and they were flat, and they were just for, advertising. And you got them and they still had a good weight, but they were totally flat. And you're like, this obviously looks fake. It's just to show what the credit card would look like. Well, now we fast forward 15, 20 years, and that's what our credit cards actually look like. They're all flat. There's nothing raised. All the information's on the back. So, yeah, in times of things constantly changing with credit cards and the way they look and the weight, if you've handled what those American Express black cards, or the charcoal cards, they feel like they're a brick. they're really heavy. And then you have some that are super, super thin. So, you can't tell, right? Unless it goes through what's real and what's not. But what are some ways too that stores can put these little things in place? Is it getting a signature? Is it having, the credit card company or merchant services number available? Like, what do you do?
Signatures, I'll cover that right quick. The industry doesn't use those anymore. Bankings don't use signatures for fraud investigation. If you collect a signature, that's just for you and your own records. No one else really is going to use that. The other thing is credit cards, even if it's their credit card, there's no fraud necessarily being taken place. You do not want to handle the credit card yourself unless you absolutely have to, and you need to be aware that handling it could reduce your chance of saying this isn't my fault when someone does a dispute or whatever. I'll give you an example. When I worked in Colorado at a bank, there was up in Telluride, this very wealthy town. These two ladies went out for a night on the town, got a little too drunk. One ended up in the slammer, and the other one was trying to pay her bail to get her out. And so she goes to the bank, gets a cash advance on her card, and pays off the bill. Well, the next day, she disputes it and says, "No, I didn't authorize that. I didn't do it." And the bank comes back and says, "Hey, we have these cameras over the counter showing everything that happened, proving that you were here and that you got that money out and everything." Well, the teller handled the card and put the card in and everything. So ultimately, technically, you can't really prove that the customer authorized every step of it. So she ended up getting the money, basically. So just make sure handle cards as little as possible. And what was the other part of your question?
I was just gonna say, she literally got out of jail for free.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, I mean, that was it as far as, and see, this is where you keep teaching me new things too. And I, bring that forward into training and everything is one, um, that the signature really is just for store use. I mean, remember, you used to have to walk out, you had to sign it. You couldn't just put in a pin. Well, pins didn't exist, right? But having that signature is more just for you. What about checking IDs when you use a credit card? What's the latest and greatest on that?
ID checking is, I forget what rules and regulations are around that, but that's a good idea if you're dealing especially with higher dollar items. SimpleConsign does have built into the system a way to, and it's tedious anytime that you have to scan an ID and put it into the system, but you can, if it's a repeat customer or if they're buying a high dollar item, get an image of their ID saved in their customer profile within SimpleConsign along with their address, name, and all that. I know a lot of people, a few stores have said that they, say they're selling really high dollar purses and someone uses a fake ID or whatever in there. At least you have the information of that fake ID that the police report can then track where that ID was used elsewhere. And it does help. As far as checking an ID, whether it's real or not, that's all over the board. Every state has different security features. So you'll want to check your state's website for that.
Yeah, and it ultimately comes down to, right, like what area do you live in? Or, what are your policies you already have in place? One of my favorite stories is for years and years and years, there was a husband and wife that came in shopping together. He would be standing right there. She would hand over the credit card. It had his name on it, but he was standing there. And, years went by and they did this and they bought, their transactions would easily be $800 and up. And then, after a while, he wasn't there, but due to just having that comfort level of him usually being there, we didn't think anything of it, right? When she came in and spent a couple $1,000s. Well, fast forward a few months after that, come to find out they were getting divorced and she was just running up whatever she possibly could on his credit cards. And so, getting cash back in grocery stores and doing all kinds of stuff. And I was like, one, teach me your ways. And two, you don't think about that kind of stuff until it happens. And that's why we're all kind of here. So I want to shift gears too. I mean, of course, there's only so much we can control coming in from the outside world. But I want to talk about internal theft, right? Because that's one of the top things. It's not the people on the outside, it's in store. And as heartbreaking as that is, because you typically all work together, we're family, and you never want to think someone would be doing naughty things, but we have to have those conversations. And I mean, I see the support tickets come in all the time about building reports to look at certain things. So I definitely want to, now start talking about, as far as best practices in the store for employees, like when you're dealing with cash and you're doing deposits, and things like that. Even, closing, whether you're managing cash at closing, opening, what are those best practices?
Best practice one is to set up. I know not every store is able to do this because a lot of stores are smaller stores and they have one person at a time in the store. But if you can, if you have multiple people working, or even if you do have the one, it's good to have a sign off sheet saying these are the steps that need to be done. Um, if you have an issue with drawers being off all the time, in banking, if your drawer is off, you have to have two people sign off on it to verify that it is indeed off. So if you're, $2 off or $20 off, two people put their little initials somewhere on a sign sheet. Another one is in SimpleConsign, the software itself. We have a lot of things that can help you out. We have manager overrides. So if you don't want just anybody running your end of day process, then you can put a manager override on there for whoever has manager access credentials to put in their 4-digit PIN to override the end of day completion. There's a bunch of overrides inside the software. I recommend going in there and looking around and seeing what might be a good idea for you. Other things that are in SimpleConsign that can help you is, most importantly, user logins. Keep those separate. Don't share one login between everybody. If you do think a login's compromised, you can always change the passwords and the PIN credentials. So, and that also helps keep track in the system who did what. So you don't necessarily have to think that someone's, stealing from you, but maybe they're making a lot of mistakes. And when you find out that it's Joe Bob doing the mistake, a few times a week, then you can sit down with Joe Bob and come up with a plan of how to correct that. There's several ways that someone can, if they get your login credentials, especially if they have access to the back office and settings, they can really mess with things.
Absolutely. And we were talking about that because we all bounce around with support tickets and stuff. And the amount of these that we get, it's hard for us to hear because, we want all stores to, just love every single second of being in that store and running. But we do know there are these downsides that you have to deal with, and they're not pretty and they're not fun. And we do hear quite a bit. And if you are a store that's doing this, first rule is you do what works best for you. That's always the first one. However, there is the one, everybody having their own sign-in number, as even if it's just as a cashier, it's so important because then you can dwindle things down and even run reports on who's, doing what. This is this.
You won't. I get unfortunately I get asked a bunch in support how to find out where, why the drawer is off $80, and there is never going to be a report that can track that $80 went in someone's pocket rather than the drawer, or that the cashier handed someone back too much money by accident. There's never going to be a report to show you that. That's one reason why it's good to have that conspicuous counting with the camera over the counter, so then you can kind of see if you're able to do that. But if you're off by a cash amount, you can maybe infer what happened by looking at your drawer totals and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But
Oh no. And just not to be not to be morbid, but one thing that I always share with stores too, and something that I learned along the way, and fortunately I didn't have to deal with it, but someone told me, is here's a perfect example of someone being really smooth. They had many thousands and thousands of consigners at this location. Somebody who was very seasoned, knew how to work Simple Consign, knew what reports look like, and would look in to see who had activity not for quite some time. And they were literally looking for people who had passed away. And they were doing payouts on their accounts and pocketing that money. And when you're dealing with stores that can have, 6, 10, 15,000 consigners, and this money's been sitting there for a while, and then they're just doing payouts. So, it's kind of like one of those things where you think, no, someone wouldn't do that. No, they just wouldn't. Yes, they would do that. And they have done that. So, as far as, and this isn't on our question list, it's just something I'm coming up with to see how you feel about it too, is do you feel like there should be, that you should go in and check report, consigner balances if they've sat for how long? Like you have that money sitting there and it's a liability to you as a store. What do you do with it?
well,
Tempting it.
most states have a law where you have to surrender funds after so long. You'll want to. We can't comment on things legally, so but
Yes, that's
there
a
is that.
disclaimer. Disclaimer.
You need to check out there, see what you're actually legally supposed to do with unclaimed balances. And yes, there's reports that you can do to check and make sure that these people have not been active for a while and they have an unclaimed balance. One thing that I forgot, I wanted to go back to with doing things at the register. The number one way that someone can kind of legally steal from you is when you're handling their card or cash or whatever, they distract you with either weird actions or conversation, or maybe they have a kid doing something to draw your eye over somewhere where they'll trip you up. So maybe they're not like that husband and wife. Maybe it is a lady using a man's name on a card, and you don't notice it because they're distracting you on purpose. So you just need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, they will definitely get really, really creative. What would you say as far as, so if you are a store owner or a store manager, what would be your top two favorite reports in Simple Consign that you would pull on a daily basis to look for any of those red flags?
Your end of day report. That the end of day report, just to clarify for those of you who don't know, that is solely just for what goes through your registers. That has nothing to do with your actual sales total. If you count that you have $8,000 in your drawer and you actually did $500 of business, that does not mean that the sales report is going to show $8,000. They're The system keeps those two things separate. So if you make a mistake on your end of day, don't worry about it. It's just for your records for this specific reason, to keep track of your numbers and see if anything weird's going on. So if you see that your money's off on the end of day report, that's the number one red flag. A lot of stores still are not doing their end of day cycles. I know it's tedious, but it is highly recommended. Uh, just to keep an eye on things.
Yeah. And talking about being tedious, I know something that, we always used to do in the store too. And of course, it's one of those things that helps with internal and external. And you even got me on this yesterday too. So that's major bonus points. Um, you asked me what, in the world of theft prevention, what does duality mean? And I came up with God only knows how many, great little funny jokes on what that means. But let's talk about that for a second. What does that mean in a store when it comes to making sure everything stays safe? Your employees, your product, and your money.
So if you're buying a car, if you're doing banking, if you're dealing with high-end jewelry, if you're dealing with high-end transactions of any kind, it's a good idea to have dual control. That's where, say you have a safe that you put all your jewelry in every night, and you might have $50,000 plus jewelry in there. Well, you're going to want to make sure that unless you wholly own it, then you can have the whole safe code. But if other people are in there messing with your safe, then you need to make sure that one person has one half of the code and another person has the other half, and that they don't share. So that way, no one person can access the goods, so to speak. And you want to keep that in mind with cash deposits and stuff like that. If you're depositing large amounts of cash, just anything of high value.
And fun fact, just to piggyback on that, if you do have a key for anything, for a case, for a safe, probably, well, probably not so much for a safe, but like cases, you lock your purses up in cases or a jewelry case.
You have
Oh,
two keys.
I was gonna say keep the copy because I can't tell you how many times I've had to replace a lock or an entire glass cabinet because I locked the key in it by closing, the ones that have the little teeth and and I locked it on the back of it and put the thing across, and then I would look into the case and I'd be like, oh, well, there's the key. So always have two sets, one for you, even if you keep it at home and it's not physically there in the store. But if you do those sorts of things, obviously, then the product that you're protecting is safe, but you still have to be able to get to it in some respects. So those are those are all funny stories too. Now, you go through the whole day, right? And you're tired. It's the end of the day. A lot of stores, especially, and during holiday season when you're cranking, 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 and you have extra stock and you are doing extra things. You're doing parties, you have holiday decor. What are some safeguards and must-dos when you close to keep your product safe, to keep, people maybe from watching you close? What are some things that you can do?
Yeah, just like when you leave the store or when you enter the store, and you need to be aware of your surroundings, see if anybody's like watching you. Same when you exit the store, be aware of your surroundings. Don't let someone put their foot in the door as you're trying to shut it. Um, the other thing to keep mind of is if you have weird corners or whatever in your store that you don't normally walk the aisles of, if you're not able to constantly monitor, put mirrors if you can, in areas to where you can see around the corner, around angles, especially when you're closing a store and you want to walk through everything fast. Uh, and you got little pockets that you are finding that you're not checking, even though you know you should. Put a mirror there so that way it's conducive. Don't fight it.
I wonder, that makes me think too, how like when you go around a store and you're walking around, they have those little signs that say, smile, you're on camera. Like, how many do you think that stores, and I might be just totally giving this away here. Do you think that stores really do have cameras based at that? Or do you think they just put that sign there for the psychological, like you're being watched, don't do anything?
I'd probably say 50-50, and the people stealing a lot of the time even know that they're not. A lot of time they'll be able to parse out whether or not it's fake. So
But it makes them stop and think, right? Like I always know that
sometimes, yes,
when
it
I come around
makes
the corner, I'm
it,
like,
it, yeah, sometimes it'll add a little extra theft deterrent, especially to people who are not professionals, so to speak.
mhm. Yeah, that always helps. And I think too, another thing that I just even thought of is, do you think so? Like, usually stores, because they're doing more cash payouts because people are Christmas shopping, so they want that money. How do you feel about if stores do cash payouts and they offer that to their customers, or their buyout right stores? So they need cash to be able to pay their customers. If they're increasing how much money they're keeping in the store, what is there a certain amount that they should increase it by? I know I get this question a lot, right? Um,
So There's several things to do. So you set a limit for how much is actually kept in the drawer. If it gets above, let's say $3,000 in the drawer, then that is an automatic, what's called a drop. And you drop that money into maybe a secondary in between the safe and the drawer. You might have a locked cubby that you drop that money in quickly. Say you just got a $5,000 purchase and you need to drop $3,000 of that into your cubby. So that way, if you get someone hold the register up or reach into the register and just grab it and go, it limits your losses. The other place, of course, is your safe. If you have that dual control, that's one layer of security, and make sure that you do your drops whenever possible into the safe. The other thing to think about with cash is if you have people that are constantly off or you have concerns about anything or changing of shift, that's a good time to count your drawer. You don't have to just count it at the end of the day when you close. You can count it midday when you change shift and make sure that everything is, on the money.
And so we have all this money, right? And this cash in hand, especially with an increase of it, going into this time of year.
Oh, I almost forgot how you do it in SimpleConsign. You probably know this, Megan. How do you
Oh, let's see. I know this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then we make it a really easy button. So under the admin tab on the terminal side, there's literally two buttons that says add cash to drawer and remove cash from drawer. You click that, you just say what you're adding or removing, give it a quick reason. And then that way, at the end of your day, you balance out. Because real life, the owner of the store that I worked at, she loved nothing more than to buy us coffee and bagels from the bagel place next door. If it was someone's birthday, whatever the case may be. And love that. So sweet. Can't say anything bad about it. But she just take that money from the drawer, go buy it, and do nothing else. And then when myself or somebody else was closing that night, we'd be like, oh my gosh, we're $40 short. But why are we $40 short? Every store will have that little variance of, yeah, I'm over a dollar. Yeah, money sticks together, or you forgot, during your opening, you forgot to count that roll of nickels. Like that's okay, but $40, you start to like that's a good chunk of money to be off. So doing that one little step, if it does not have anything to do with a sale and you're grabbing or taking money, do that. It
Yeah.
will save people from wanting to have a stroke in the middle of the day.
Ultimately, what that button does is it adds and removes from the end of day report.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's where too, like I know you've had some support tickets that's where you've even found where that issue is. Someone would call and be like, "Oh yeah, we forgot we paid our window cleaner. We just popped open that cash drawer and gave
Yeah.
that to them." So, because it's easy and it's convenient and it's right there. But yeah, so if somebody has access to pop open that cash drawer, that's another thing to even put in place. If you pop that open, I want to know why. I want to be able to see on that add or subtract why you open that cash drawer. Um, because then it'll make people think about, oh, I just don't want to open it. And then they're wondering why I'm opening it. So that's
Another thing when you want to check if you see like there's an offage and you don't know when in time it happened, there's also the end of month report that compiles your end of day reports for however long of time that you put in there. It doesn't have to be for a month. So say you're going back all over your numbers for this last quarter of business, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm off $3,000. When did that happen? You can actually I would first break it down by month, do your end of month report for January, February, March, and then you realize, okay, well, the offage is in March. So let's start breaking that down by week, do the end of month report for week by week. And then you realize that it was the second week of March that offage happened. And then you can start doing end of day reports, looking through those to see where it is. So it's not so much of a needle in a haystack.
and I want to pop quiz you, George. So if so one more thing too, and we're talking about, internal theft and we're talking about inventory, what's something else that we can do in Simple Consign to track that?
To
Is
track what?
back office to track our inventory.
Oh, well, inventory in general. Okay, so it's a good idea to use SimpleConsign to your advantage. That's one of the great reasons to have it. And you can put all of your inventory in the system ahead of time and track it as it goes out the door, one way or the other. So there's this inventory audit feature. Once you get all your inventory in there, I say every half a year to a year, do an inventory audit. So that way you can see your numbers. There'll always be inventory that's probably not accounted for various reasons. And maybe it's not necessarily nefarious. Maybe a consignor took it out without, forgetting to tell the store or whatever. But that's a huge way to keep track of how much your losses are, is do inventory reports regularly.
Perfect. Well, and another thing too, so if you are doing a return or you found something on your sales floor that you can't sell, it's ripped, it's stained, it's broken, it just has to go back. Of course, you're gonna either, donate it, give it back to the consignor, but don't forget too to go back into Simple Consign and change the status of it. Because if you're not changing the status of it, it's still showing as active. And 6 months down the road, you're not going to remember, oh, I damaged out a pair of sneakers because the sole fell out. You're just not. So now you're thinking that you're missing that piece, but you're really not. So that's kind of one of those flip scenarios, right? Where, you think something was lost or stolen, but it really wasn't. You just, don't remember because it was 6 months ago. So if it's not staying active, go in and change that status immediately. Don't wait. Oh, I'll do it later. No, you won't. You'll forget. We're only human. And
But I, and
yeah.
then when you do the inventory audit, if there was things you didn't miss, the inventory audit would catch it. A good way to do your inventory audit is to get one of those old school TV carts, put a laptop on it with your scanner gun, and when the store is closed for a day or two, just go through all of your inventory, scanning it, and complete it out, and it'll give you a before list and an after list to
It is.
compare.
And you can do it by category too. So, I mean, a lot of stores, right? They might be bigger and they have tons of stuff and they can't close for 1 or 2 days or want to get up at 3 a.m., which is understandable. So you can go in and say, I just want to do inventory today on jewelry and just pull up that jewelry category, shoes. So I think, and inventory is really personal too, right? There's some stores that you sell stuff so fast you just don't do inventory. Or if you have handwritten tags, you can't do inventory because it's not already in the system. Um, but yeah, dedicating here and there to spot check things. Also, too, before we start winding down, if you have any picture frames on your walls, I don't know why I thought of this, probably because I saw your beautiful picture frames back there, or in your fitting rooms, if you have framed mirrors, make sure people cannot tuck tags behind them. Um, as we were cleaning fitting rooms, and we had 8 fitting rooms in the store, and we had these beautiful like antique mirrors. Some of them were really tall floor. I can't tell you how many tags were tucked behind them. Lululemon was really big at the time, and when I took one of them off the wall, I about died. So if there's like little hiding places that people can tuck things in where there's not cameras, like in your bathrooms or in those fitting rooms, if they can't shove a tag somewhere, they might think twice about taking that item because you just don't want to leave it on the floor. So that's another little good one too. We'll keep you here all day if you let us talking about this because we both have stories. But we do need to start winding things down a little bit because we know that your time is super, super valuable and you've got lots of things to do. So, with that being said, we want to kind of open it up for a few minutes to see if anyone who is joining us today has any specific questions for myself or for George or something that you want to share. We love crazy stories too, by the way.
We're waiting on those to show up. I'll report one last thing. When you have an employee get let go or quit or whatever, delete them out of the system. It won't delete their history, but it'll delete their login, and someone won't be able to go in and meddle with things, especially if they're a disgruntled employee.
Yes. Yes, that is very, very true. And of course, we're not saying that either, and I'm not agreeing to scare you, but there's the beauty of it being a cloud-based system that you can access it anytime, anywhere. So yeah, if someone does not need access to it anymore, take them out as a user. And also too, what I used to do is I used to have a lot of, younger girls that did summer help. They would come back from school. And so I wouldn't delete them from the system because I didn't want to have to re-enter them at Christmas or anything like that. I would just regenerate their PIN. And that way, when they came back in, I just had to give them a new 4-digit PIN. But that way, I at least knew no matter what happened, good or bad, they just thought they were doing this or that, they couldn't get into the system. Oh, let's see what we got here. I should be wearing my glasses today, and I
If
am
baby
not.
or if cameras are too expensive, look into baby monitors. Some of them are cheaper and link to phones. Good idea,
Yeah.
especially secondhand ones.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. I mean, even, I get the question a lot too, about theft deterrent pieces to attach to clothes, like the little, little buttons. Those security systems can get ridiculously expensive as far as having a tag on an item. We all know we have all wrestled with a piece of clothing at one point that a store has forgotten to take it off, and we are coated in blue ink because we're wrestling with it at home, right? Like or we destroy it, we put a hole in it. Now I'm not saying you can't do that because those are very effective for things not walking out the door. But even as simple as if you get the little plastic fasteners that have the little ribs on them, they're kind of like zip ties, but they're super small. You can get, I mean, I used to order them from, oh gosh, it'll come to me in just a second. Oh, so Store Supply Warehouse. I think you can get like 5,000 of them for $5 or $6. And I would just either put my price tag on that or I would attach a little something to it. And you can't just rip them off like you can one of the little clothes fasteners. So believe it or not, when people couldn't like rip that off, because as we know, people like to switch tags too. I mean, that's something, like I said, we can keep you here all day. People switch tags on things if you don't have a major description. Oh, shoes, they're a size 10, they're blue. Okay, well, one pair was $14, but you have another pair that's similar and they're $90. How easy is it just to switch a tag? So going and thinking about what kind of tags and how you're adhering your price tags to things also play a huge part, of the thing. But being descriptive when you price something, give it a name, give it that category, give it extra information, because that way, when somebody comes up with that pair of shoes that, you're looking at them and you're like, I wouldn't have priced these at $18. You have more of a description. And when you ring it up, you say, oh, I'm so sorry, that's not these shoes. These shoes are this, these shoes are this. Some, the tags got switched on the sales floor. I'm so sorry, I can't sell them to you at this price. It's not the same product. Do you want to have that conversation with somebody at checkout? No, no, not really. It's never fun. Again, to talk about that's the theme of this, right? It's not fun to have things stolen from you. Um, but there's the good way to deal with it so you feel safe, everyone you work with feels safe, and you put things in place so everybody knows you're thinking about it. And they always think they're smarter than you are. And sometimes
And
they are. But
all the thing,
fair.
and then all the things that we've covered here. I'm not sure exactly. I've never had to go for business insurance myself, but if you do certain things, there's certain business insurances that'll give you deductions or what have you if you have certain measures in place. So it's another way to potentially save a little money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing is too, is, we're talking about theft. And I mean, unfortunately, we've had stores that, I mean, I follow some stores on social media or you take a look at them and they've had cars driven right through the front of their store. Um, and the beauty of it again is having on your, um, oh gosh, your end of day report on that bottom right hand corner, you have the monetary value of what you have in your store right there as a number.
If you're doing the end of day, yeah.
Yeah, do listen. Everybody knows if you've had any training or settings with me, I do not let you out of that settings without saying if even if you do it at 9 p.m., 2 a.m., or you do it the next morning, run your end of day and finalize on a daily basis and take a quick look at those two reports, the sales report and that end of day reports. They are at a glance going to give you all of those major red flags if there is a problem. And you'll get used to where there's going to be numbers and where there's not numbers. If I don't do layaways and I see minus $300 on a layaway refund on my report, that red flag is smacking me in the face. I'm immediately going to want to go look at my transactions and see what happened, right? And it usually falls under three things. One, you blacked out and you have no idea how you made the mistake. We've all been there, done that, right? We don't do them on purpose. Two, we thought we knew what we were doing and not so much. And then it becomes a learning and a training opportunity so it doesn't happen again. Or three, somebody knows what they're doing and they shouldn't be doing it. So those are, if you get nothing else from listening to us chat today, do those two reports. They are going to tell you all of the secrets of the day, of your wins, things you can improve on, and if somebody is doing something or something's happening that's hurting your business. Thank you, homegrown. Thank you. That's right, Tanya. Run it. Because when we get those support tickets and we get those questions, and trust me, we both get them, in the roles we have. And that's one of the first questions will be like, well, did you do this? And a lot of times, stores will say, no, I only finalize once a week. And I'm just like,
Date is your friend.
yes. I'm like, okay, well, guess who's going through 5 days of sales instead of just today's day? Not me.
And to wrap things up, how do we contact you?
Yes. So me, a lot of people have my information because a lot of times you're the first person, I'm the first person you talk to. So my email address is Megan, Megan, letter H at simpleconsign.com. I know Caroline will also go ahead and throw that in the email after this and make sure everyone who's registered has my email. And as far as the most wonderful person in the world, George, how can things trickle to you in a nonchalant way?
So there's not that many of us in support, and the best way to get to us is support@simpleconsign.com. And any one of us should be able to answer your questions. If one of us can't, we know who to go to because there's only four or
Yeah.
five of us at any given time,
Yeah, well,
typically.
that's the thing too. I mean, and if anybody does have a specific question for George, email me, and I would be more than happy to be that go-between. It's just sometimes in different roles, as you all know, you might send me a message first thing in the morning, and I can't answer you till the end of the day. It just all depends on what's going on. But we really appreciate that you guys have joined us today and just listening to our chit chat back and forth. I hope you learned some things that you probably already knew or didn't know. I know I'm always learning and then sharing that with stores too. So we hope that we were able to help you a little bit, start gearing up for those fall seasons and going into your busy seasons, so you feel a little bit more protected.